Lately I've been thinking about this life and how it brought me here. Staring at this man in the mirror, I see him.
Welcome to the Message Hope podcast, where the hope stands for hearing other people's experience. My name is Adam.
My name is Mike, and today in the studio we have another Mike.
Yeah, another Mike.
Studio.
We'll call him Mike S, right?
Mike S.
Mike S. So we got Mike S in the studio. Yeah, man, I've known Mike for a while now, you know, and fucking, I don't know, every time I hear your story and the way you share it and your passion and your enthusiasm and just the stories you tell, bro, are fucking like truly amazing, bro. And you've definitely come a long way. And so, yeah, I'm excited, bro.
Oh, yeah. How you doing, Mike?
Good.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So we pretty much started off like, what was your upbringing like? Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? What was your family dynamics like? Things like that.
Awesome. Yeah, so I was actually I was born in Paramount Hospital in Los Angeles. You know, my mother and my father, they kind of lived in a trailer in the back of my grandma's house in Bellflower, you know, and I actually have a brother, you know, that's, you know, kind of from F-13. He just grew up in that lifestyle, you know, in East LA, you know, and came to know fluent Spanish. And, you know, they had a plan, you know, just to save and kind of escape from that area, you know. So when I was about 5 years old, you know, they made a transition into Corona, you know, and bought a house in Corona. You know, it was a middle-class neighborhood. And, you know, my mother, you know, she's always been kind of like a functional drinker, you know, and my father struggled with heroin his whole life, you know, and he was getting methadone kind of prescribed to him, you know, and off the heroin, you know, and I think the story kind of goes to say that, you know, he had got cut off his methadone and kind of went into a relapse, you know. When I was about 6 years old, I was going into the first grade, you know, and I think it was probably like a year after we had gotten this house in Corona. And, you know, he ended up ODing, man. He ended up ODing, you know, and my mother kind of thought that he had took off, right? Like, she tells me stories today, you know, and she would go to work and, you know, share with her friends like, hey, we just had this kid, you know, I got this 5-year-old son at home, you know, and I think my husband just took off on me. He hasn't been home 2-3 days. And sure enough, man, we get a call from the police department like 5 days later, you know, and they found his body deceased with a needle in his arm, you know, in the parking lot of a Food for Less, man, in Corona, you know, and it was just devastating, you know, and I think I was kind of too young to understand at the time, you know, what was going on, you know. But I say that story to say that, like, kind of like my mom would instill at that age, you know, you better never grow up and do drugs because you know how I feel about what happened to your dad, you know. And like I said, I was too young to understand at the time. But, you know, as I got a little bit older, you know, I had this mindset, right, that drugs were, you know, a lead destruction of life, right? And you know, out of that whole story, man, I'll never forget, like, when they brought the van home, right? Like, they brought the van home after, you know, and probably a week or two after the fact, you know, and just that smell, man, you know. It's something that I could still to this day, you know, that sensory of smell, you know, and it's a crazy story, you know. We actually had a wiener dog, man. His name was Leo, you know, and it was the family pet, you know, and he was actually in the van with him. Oh, wow. You know, and after all that, you know, a week of being in there with no food, you know, the wiener dog survived, you know, and you know, it's just a trip, you know, that kind of transpired, you know, and to say all that, you know, and working with the sponsor, you know, and digging deep back into my childhood, you know, which I would have never thought in a million years to kind of do, you know, is where that fear got instilled in my life, right? You know, because what happened was it was kind of like headline news, right? And I had like you know, I had a close group knit of friends, man, that were the same age as me, probably like 5 or 6 buddies that we all lived in a 2-3 block radius from each other at that age, man, in first grade, right? And their parents found out, right? It was a big deal, right? And I'll never forget, that was like my first stages of like rejection, man. I would like go and like knock on my buddy's door, like, hey, what's up? And they would shut the door and run out like, hey, you can't be here, and it was like that first stages of being like not understanding why, right? Like, and just truly grateful, man, that I have the chance to share that today, with the honest, open heart, and to be able to work through that, It's a beautiful thing, to be able to work through that fear, man, because what happened with that is that fear, ended up turning into pain, and untreated and unnoticeable, and too young to understand, that pain turned into anger, and it originated with that fear. Right. And I got very angry at a very young age. I was rebellious. I didn't want to follow direction in class, and I was always a class clown, trying to distract the class, and never understood why, right. Until I got to, this 12-step program, man, and started really digging deep onto where those behaviors originated from, And I could say this, man, that that fear and that pain and that anger, man, it just spiraled out of control to where I started using myself, and and I could remember vividly my first time, smoking pot. I actually didn't like it. I hear millions of stories where it was like, oh, I used for the first time and it was my escape from reality. And I think it was just my guilty conscience, because it was instilled in me very young not to use drugs, and knowing what happened to my father, And so I was like scared to go home, right? I had used with a buddy, and it was actually like his stepdad that got me high, and I had to go home, and I was like, just super scared to go home, and just like went straight in my room, fell asleep, but after that, man, it was off and running, I just, every allowance that I got, I would get $10-15 allowance from my mother, and I would just, spend weekends at this guy's house with this stepdad and just getting loaded, man. And, I was actually heavily involved with sports. My sister, she's a huge influence in my life. She stepped in. It's my half sister. We have the same father, different mother. And she really stepped in, after my dad had passed, and she got me into sports, right? And I chose basketball, man. She kind of let me decide what kind of sport I wanted to get into, and she mentored and led me through, my earlier years, to kind of stray me away from, the street lifestyle, and it's something that I enjoy doing. I played basketball all growing up, and highly active in showing up for practice and playing games and traveling different cities and something I love doing, but, once the pot came into place, I just threw everything I love doing out the window, and that's just from smoking weed, man, and it's another thing that I noticed today, with working with the sponsor, man, is how influential, an addict like me, man, could just totally give up everything they love doing, for that next fix, man.
Yeah. Damn. I have a lot of similarities with you in that. Like my dad wasn't around. He was using heroin. He didn't pass away from it, but he was absent. And my mom got me, I think because to maybe distract me from the fact that my dad wasn't around, I got into T-ball like right away. My mom had freshly gotten clean, and we would walk to baseball practice, me and my mom and my little brother. And I was highly involved in that until the weed came around. I stuck with baseball all into high school, and as soon as that came into play, like, I didn't care anymore. I knew the drug test was coming, and I was fine with that. I was fine with being off the team, and it's just crazy. If I'd have never done that, what could have happened, But so what age were you when you got into smoking weed?
So I was probably like most of all of us, right? I was probably in the 7th grade, 12 years old, you know, and you know, it like I said, it just progressed, you know, it just became a thing to where it had to be every day, from waking up before school, you know, sneaking the little sneak-a-toke in my zipper, right, to get loaded at school, you know, and and after school, right, and it had to become before everything, you know, waking up, getting to school, at school, after school, you know, all day maintenance of activity, you know. And I think really too is that's where, you know, the lies started, right, you know, and kind of betraying my mother, right, and you know, God bless her, you know, mothers, you know, it's kind of a different story, you know, only having your mother around, you know, they only know best, right, to kind of nourish and you know, treat their children, you know, to the best of their ability, and a lot of the times that could be highly enabling, right?
Yeah.
You know, and they don't know any different, you know, they're just doing what they know how to do best and love on their kids, man. And to say all that, you know, is she would never call me out, right? She would never, you know, portray it as there was an issue or a problem, right? Or you know, any kind of consequence or disciplinary, you know, there was never any of that really involved, man. But with the lies, you know, I started off real early, man, stealing out of her purse, right? And she would, you know, she would go on little Harley rides with her boyfriend over the weekend and lock her purse in the room, right? And, you know, and I would get into the room, right? I would bust through with the card or, you know, a butter knife to get in the door, you know, to get to her wallet, man, and take 40 to like $100, man, at a time, you know, and just to go get loaded, you know. And, you know, shortly after that, you know, kind of that same group of childhood friends that I was kind of saying a little bit ago, man, you know, we grew up all the way until after high school together in that same neighborhood, you know, and kind of, you know, cocaine kind of hit our streets, you know, and at a very young age, man, you know, I think I was going into the 9th grade, you know, and one of the neighborhood friends, man, he was already selling cocaine, and you know, we just all got into it, you know, and that was a whole nother progression in itself, you know, getting into heavily drugs and not even realizing, you know, just kind of following suit of what, you know, everybody else in the neighborhood was kind of, you know, gravitating towards, right. You know, and I could say this, man, you know, out of all that, you know, out of all those, that stint of using cocaine, you know, is, I remember, man, there was times where, you know, we would just lock ourselves in my room, man. We just lock ourselves in my room and we would just do a line, go outside, smoke a cigarette, come back, do a line, go outside and smoke a cigarette. And through the progression, man, we would start, you know, looking under the crack of the door, putting our ear up to the door, you know, and you know, so young and so inexperienced of what drug addiction was, man. Right. We didn't even realize that it was paranoia, you know, is the sickness behind the disease, you know, and looking back on that is like, man, you know, what a trip, you know, being so young in addiction, you know, and not even realizing or understanding that was, you know, clear signs of paranoia, you know, and not even wanting to interact or come out into the living room anymore, or, you know, just locking the door and that was it, man. Just, you know, doing lines and going outside for a quick cigarette, coming back in, you know, and not only that, but the lies also, you know, got a lot more intensive, right? The stealing the money, you know, got more, progressed into, you know, taking more out of the purse at a time, you know, to feed this addiction of cocaine, you know, and it was all fun and games, man. It really was. No responsibility. I had no realistic goals in life. You know, I'll never forget this, man. I got a buddy, his name's Johnny, you know, and he was raised by his grandparents, right? And super structured household, right? And his uncles owned like a body shop in Brea, right? And they would always take him to work over the summer at a very young age, right? He was always instilled with this work ethic, right? And his uncles took an extra initiative into like, you know, making sure that he was going to grow up to be a hard worker, man, in life, you know, and be somebody in life, you know. And I'll never forget, you know, he didn't sit me down. We were probably rolling a blunt or something in his car, man. And he told me, he's like, hey, you know what? It's like, my uncle sat me down today and he asked me what my 5-year goal was, you know, and I was, my mind was blown, man. You know, I didn't have no response, you know, to kind of piggyback off of what he was saying, you know, at the time, you know. And he went into detail to share with me where he wanted to be in 5 years, you know. And we were probably like sophomore, juniors in high school, right? And it was kind of what he wanted to do after high school, man. And, you know, you know, I honestly, I could sit here and tell you guys, man, my mind was blank. You know, I couldn't tell you what I wanted to do. You know, I was, you know, just, you know, under my mother's roof, you know, and she, like I said, you know, she just nourished and just kind of enabled my addiction, you know, from a very young age, you know, and not even realizing that's what was going on, you know.
Yeah, I don't think at that age I've ever had. I mean, my 5-year plan, honestly, was probably
Go to
prison. Yeah, it was, bro. Like, me and Martha, we talk about that kind of stuff. Like, I remember being, like, young, bro, like 17, 16, maybe 18. But, and really, like, talking about, like, go to prison, get this tattoo or that tattoo. Like, it's so weird, bro, that, like, I don't know. I know I grew up with like a very sick, twisted reality. Right? Like, fucking, my neighborhood was like my whole world, right? And so, like, when you grow up in like one specific neighborhood and that is like the only reality you ever see, right? Except for, you know, the reality my dad showed me, but that was for other people. That wasn't for me, right? I don't know, man. You just grow up with these sick thoughts, bro, right? And all the same shit, bro. Like, growing up, like at a young age, you know, doing, you know, methamphetamine, and then like my cousins, the way they moved and the way they behaved. And I remember, like, we would fucking, you know, put like blankets over the windows, right? And I remember one time my cousin, he got a little fucking a little knife, bro, and he fucking like slit just a little hole through it.
So you could look through it?
Yeah, so you could look through it, and then he would turn off all the lights so that you couldn't see the shadows, right? And bro, like that, like just seeing somebody else do that, and I was like, oh well, this food's from blah blah blah, yeah, right? And he does blah blah blah. So like this is how I must have to move, right? And then it just like sparked this whole fucking thing, and then like we convince ourselves that we're having fun, bro. I mean, I'm not saying that none of it was fun, right? But we convince ourselves that we're having fun. We're paranoid, locked in a room, only coming out for a cigarette, bro.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like what kind of party is that, bro? Like, you know what I'm saying?
And and to totally agree with you, Adam. That's why I love you, brother. You know, a lot of our similarities, you know, and our transparencies, you know, and our passion, right? When you share, you know, is honest, you know, and that's something I always, in my personal self, has held wholeheartedly, you know, is that honesty, man. And you're right, you know, and you know, the sickness behind the whole disease, man, is the courage behind that, you know, is seeing other individuals do things like that, man, and say, oh, that's hardcore, right? And something that we look up to, right? And something that, you know, all the false perceptions, man, of being misled, right? And for me speaking, you know, misleading myself for so many years, you know, all the way back from that childhood experience with my father, you know, and not even understanding, man, that, you know, now, you know, that, you know, I'm you know, coming out of puberty or whatever the case scenario might be. And I'm in junior high, going into high school, man, fully induced, you know what I mean, into drug addiction already, man. And just, you know, the concept and what I thought courage was, man, this individual who might have like the fattest sack, or and it was all, sex based too, right? And that was another huge thing, of behaviors very young, man, that I had to work through with my sponsor, and thinking I'm the only one in the world that acted out that way at a young age, right? And that's the beautiful thing about sponsorship, man, is after going through all that and being so scared to death to get through that fourth step, man, my sponsor's like, me too. Yeah. Me too, right? And sharing very similar stories, man.
You're giving me chills talking about this, bro, because a lot of times we think we're so unique, right? And that we don't have like a lot of shared experience, or like we're so fucked off and so different from everybody else that no one's ever gonna understand, bro. But like, not only have I like worked my set of steps with my sponsor, which was really fucking uncomfortable, right? But everything that I talked about in that uncomfortable fucking fourth step is shit that I openly share, bro. I mean, not on a meeting level, right? Because, you got to choose your audience, bro. But like fucking, I'll get a new sponsee, right? Who's already like thinking about the fourth step and how am I gonna do it? I'm like, bro, this is what I did, right? This is the fucked up things that they happen to me, right? And like, a lot of like childhood trauma and a lot of things that we do are not that unique, bro. Right? They're not that different from a lot of people's experiences, bro. And I've seen it over and over and over again, bro. You get to a fourth step and some shit comes out, right? And it's like, bro, like that shit is more common, right? And a lot of times we think I think for me, right? As a man, I felt like some things happen, bro. I'm not gonna get into it, right? As a kid, right? But like in my head, and it was young, bro, like 5 years old, right? So in my head, I'm like it's almost like I viewed myself as a man when I was 5 years old, and I should have stopped it. I should have protected myself. I should have like, bro, what the fuck could I have done at 5 years old to protect myself or to stop anything, bro? Right? And so like, it's just like this weird perception, bro. And then when you like really dive deep into it, bro, and you put yourself in a 5-year-old, like me and Mike, we talk about this all the time, bro. Like I see my kids, right? They're 13 and 14. I know what I was doing at 13 and 14, bro. I was already fucking way off into a lot of fucking violence, into a lot of drug use, into a lot of, all different kinds of stuff, right? And so like, I can't even imagine, like they're so young and so little. Right?
Right.
And it's like, bro, at 12 years old, my son's 10, bro. In 2 years, I was already smoking weed.
What's crazy too is like that adult people were helping us do it at that age, bro.
I know.
Like something was wrong with it.
Something was wrong with them for sure.
And we thought it was cool.
And and again, it goes back to like what we talked about with Juan, right? Mislead, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or like, misled people, mislead other people, bro, right? And sometimes it's like the only love that I've ever received that felt comfortable to me, right? The love my mom gave me wasn't good enough. The love my dad gave me wasn't good enough. And so like out on the streets, I found a love that was comforting, soothing, and I just wanted to be fucking a part of it. So if this is the way we love each other, then let's love each other, because the same way I was misled, I led the younger generation too. You know what I mean? And that's why like in recovery, it's super important for me to make sure that I'm leading and guiding in the right direction, bro. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So what happened like so you kind of told us about your kid age, right? High school, you know what I'm saying? You play baseball, you play sports, you did all that stuff, right? Or basketball, my bad. And then you got into drugs, right? Which paranoia at a young age. So what happened like when you become of age? Did things get deeper?
Right. So and then that transpires into a whole nother story. After the whole getting heavily involved with in the cocaine, right? I could also vividly remember when I was first introduced to methamphetamines, man. And same thing like we were just sharing, getting misled by older individuals, and thinking at the time our courage was like, man, I'm in the right spot, right? Yeah. Like this is cool, and this is awesome, right? And I had a buddy that was, he was probably a senior, and I was a junior, or I was a sophomore, in the 10th grade, he was graduating, right? And he was whitewashed Mexican, man, and he knew fluent Spanish though, right? And he was heavily involved, man, with selling dope, you know, and I was highly, like I said, I was highly into using cocaine, man, at the time. And I remember hanging out with this guy, Tough, right? And our daily routine or our night routine, man, was what we would go, we get a 30 case of beer, man. And we would pound back this whole 30 case of beer. But in the whole interaction of this, you know what I mean? He's having customers come over, right? And this is my first exposure to methamphetamines, man. And I would tell myself in my mind, like, man, some of these people look real lost, right? Yeah. Like, I'm never going to get to a place where, you know, like it almost scared me, man, in my spirit, right? Like, you know, this is something that I'm never going to touch, right? And just by seeing the interactions of these customers that were coming to this guy's house, man. And, you know, after we would pound back this 30 case of beer every night, man, and smoking weed all night, man, we're all tossed up, cross-faded, right? And he would always do his little line, man. And sure enough, you know, hanging out with him long enough, he would offer me a line, and I denied it for probably a couple weeks, you know, and, you know, there I was, man, you know, doing my first line of speed, you know, and then, like I said, this individual, man, he was in the sales, right? And so he ended up like fronting me right off the bat. And I don't want to like kind of glamorize the whole sales story, man, but it's just a part of my story, right? And so he fronted me really quick, right? Like right off the bat of getting introduced to it. You know, he fronted me an 8-ball, right? And I became real successful, man, at selling, you know, and I wasn't no big time connection and, right. You know, these crazy stories of carrying a gun and picking up quarter pounds, you know what I mean? He would front me a little 8-ball, and I became successful at bringing him his little $90-$100 pack. Yeah. And you know, and then, but what that did was it fed my pride and my ego, man. Yeah. You know, and I didn't even realize that what was going on, right? And so I became highly involved with doing that same thing at my mother's house, man. You know, just having massive traffic come in and out, man, just locked in my room, right? And I always told myself, I held this dearly to my heart and my spirit, man, was like, man, like the only way that I'm going to stay functional is if I go to sleep every night, right? So I would wait, man, like it's 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, right? And I'll go to bed and I wouldn't get up till like 5:30 at night, right? And then again, man, I'd have all these missed calls and just start my whole sales process over again, you know, and, you know, to say that story, man, it was, I had turned 18, man. I had this 18th birthday party, right? And we were all kicking back, hanging out in my garage, man. And like I said, we're all passing the pipe around, smoking bud, you know, drinking, right? And I had a buddy, Derek, man, and he was African-American, right? Mm-hmm. And he was a childhood friend, you know, we all got along with them, right? And I had another buddy, Oscar, you know, and he had an older brother that was like, he was in a gang, he was involved in the gang in Corona, right? And this guy was a 2-striker, right? Hardcore, you know, and so I call my buddy Oscar and I tell him, hey, to my birthday party tonight, you know, go ahead and cruise over. And I think he had told me, he's like, oh, well, I got my brother with me, right? And I was like, yeah, don't trip, bring him over, you know? So they show up, right? And his brother's kind of wasted, right? Hardcore gangster, right? 2-striker. And he starts tripping on my buddy Derek, right? Because he's black. And then so my buddy Oscar pulls me aside and he's like, hey, my brother's tripping, da-da-da. Like, why you got this black guy at your house? You know, this and that, right? And I told him respectfully, you know, I was like, Oscar, I was like, dude, your brother's faded. I was like, I think you should just try to take him home, right? Yeah. And so Oscar pulls his brother aside and kind of tells him my side, right? He's like, hey, he's telling us we got to bounce, right? And so his brother trips out, right? His brother trips out, man. And then so now he's loud about it, right? In front of the whole garage, right? Oh, you got this black guy at your house, this and that, right? And so we start boxing. You know, me and the brother, the 2-striker, we start boxing, right? One of my buddies goes in, runs in the house, grabs my brother, you know, my brother just comes out swinging, boom, just starts swinging on this guy, and his name was Rudy, man, and we had a T-bar. I had a tool. It was a built-in like manufactured tool table that was kind of built in our garage, right? Mm-hmm. And on this table was a T-bar. It was probably a 5.5 foot T-bar. Mm-hmm. It's a big long metal rod that you turn off the main water in front of your house with, right? And at the end of it, it was a T, but it was like this long, right? And his brother had grabbed that T-bar and started beating my brother with it, man. And and he wanted to take his life, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs, right? And finally his brother grabbed him, right? The only one that could kind of break up the situation was his brother. And his brother finally grabbed him off of, swinging on my brother with this T-bar, man. And at the end of it, it was like a horror scene, man. The whole, they blocked off my street. The whole side of the garage was just covered in blood, broke both my brother's legs. Both of his ribs were broken, and in the hospital, man, they told him the only reason you lived through this scenario, man, is because you had so much cocaine in your system, but it was just a horrible, scene in my life, man, knowing that I was, responsible, right, for that happening, and my brother was in a wheelchair for over a year, couldn't get up to use the restroom, and I'm highly in my addiction, right? So I'm pushing him off aside, I'm still locking myself in my room, and he needs to be attended to, right? And I'm just feeding him with drugs, and in my mindset, that's just, they're gonna keep him off my back, man. And to look back on that scenario, man, it's just terrible, and that was a huge part of my amends, when it came to working my 8th step, was making amends to my brother, man, and the responsibility and owning my part of it, right? It's just a crazy scene, man, so that's just one, kind of little story that happened, in my meth addiction, right? And shortly after that, like I said, that was my 18th birthday, right? A month later, I get my mother's house raided, man. I had this next door neighbor, and he was, I've always wanted to go back to him, man, and kind of tell him how I was doing in life, because, he was neighborhood watch. He had both his kids were in like Eagle Scouts till they graduated high. And that's, that's normal, right? Yeah. And I never understood what that was, and I always hated this man, and I always looked like, oh, it's that one neighbor that I have, right? That they just won't get off my back, right? And he was the one, man, that had called the cops and told him, hey, I suspect some suspicious activity. I don't know what he's doing, right? But there's definitely some drug activity, constant traffic in and out, right? So what happened was, man, they staked out the corner of my house in a 2006 Ford Explorer, man. Uh-huh. And I had just served this guy half teener, and I walked him out to my I walked him out to the front of my house where his car was parked in my driveway, right? And I shake his hand, he gets in his car, whatever. I see this 2006 Ford Explorer coming up the street. Thought nothing of it, right? And I get back to my door, he's in his car. I get back to my front door, and I go to turn my knob, and I hear, stop right there. And this 2006 Ford Explorer stopped in front of my house. I look back, and I'm like, who the fuck are these guys, right? Two normal dudes with ball caps, right? So I'm like shaking my head, and I go back inside my house, and again, he's like, stop. And this time I turn around, he has a badge. And in my mind, I'd never been, in trouble with the law. I think I was on an informal probation at the time, actually, for some petty stuff, you know what I mean? And so they had the availability to come inside, right? So in my mindset, never being in trouble, right? I kind of froze, didn't know what to do. So I was like, oh, I'm busted, right? So they come, you know, and they, like I said, right away, they knew I was already on him. They did the research, right? They knew I was on informal probation. So they're like, oh, we have a warrant, or we're able to go in your house, right? And they find the whole get down, dude. I had like a 1/4 ounce, the scale, the scooper. The guy in the driveway was still there with the half teener, and they were staked out at the corner. So they had already seen like 3 people come and go that they were used as evidence, right? So, you know, with that whole story, you know, it was a month after my 18th birthday, man, and I had a possession for sales case, and I'll never forget, you know, we were on the way to the county jail, and we had passed the exit on the freeway to the juvenile hall, and I was like, where are we going? And they're like, oh, you're 18 now. You're going to the county. And I wish that would instilled fear in me, man. You know, and we hear that a lot in the rooms and in people's stories, man. But that's just not my story. There was no deep embedded fear, man. I was just like, okay, here we go, right? You know, to the county jail, man. And then, you know, once I had my arraignment, the public defender, I'll never forget that story either, man. You know, he sat me down and he explained it as plain as day. You know, professionally as he could. He said, look, check it out. You're 18 years old. You've never been busted with the law. The judge is willing to give you Prop 36. He said it's a drug treatment program, outpatient drug program, right? He said the benefit behind this is if you complete it, the judge will take this felony off your record, so you'll no longer carry a felony as an adult. If you don't complete it, you'll probably get reinstated. And he even told me all this, right? You'll probably get reinstated 2 or 3 times throughout the process if you mess up. Yeah. But if the judge deems fit that you're not complying with this program, you're going to end up doing the maximum state prison time that requires out of this possession for sales case, right? So I had no aspiration, you know, like I said, there was no fear instilled in me, you know what I mean? I wasn't scared to go to county. I wasn't scared to go to prison, you know, and all I seen was that dotted line. Yep. You know, he gave me that paper and he said, he said, check it out. Today. And get out today. He said, and if you're willing to take this program, go ahead and sign right here and you'll be released tonight. Yep. And that's all I seen was that dotted line. Like, they're going to let me go. And just to go right back to the street and do what I do best, man, is, you know, living to use and using to live, man. And I did just that. You know, like I said, the aspiration wasn't even there at all. And I think it worked looking back and knowing myself now, man, I'm not the smartest person, right? And that's something that I'm working on, right? But I could admit that, right? Like I said, from a very young age, I didn't pay attention in school. You know, I didn't get good grades, you know, so even the manipulation technique wasn't there in my mindset is what I'm trying to say, right? Like, I didn't even have that mindset to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this program at least just to get the courts off my back. Like, that didn't even pop into my mind. I absconded from the gate, man, and never even once. Me too. Not one time did I go down to that facility to even sign up to show them that I was interested in doing that program, man. So, after like 3 reinstatements on this program, and they would come to my house, you know, because I'm still at my mom's house with the address, right? So probation would come and pick me up straight out my house, right? And take me to county, man. And probably about the 3rd time of getting reinstated, you know, the same public defender, the same judge, he's like, look, man, you haven't even took an interest. You haven't even went down there and signed up for this program. So you're going to prison, you know what I mean? 18 months with half, right? I go to Delano. I'm still 18 years old, right? And just being misperceived, man. I took that as like, okay, I'm a man now, right? I'm going to prison, right? With that false perception and that false courage, man, of who I thought a man should be, man. And I go and I do my little 18 months with half, you know, and I get out, man. And I'll never forget this, man. I remember getting out in my state dress outs, right? They give you those khakis, the CIA or I forget, you know, what they're called, but they're the khaki dress outs, man. They give you the little even the shoes, man. They give you like these slide-ons, right? And I'll never forget, man, that once I got home, man, I still wanted to wear that outfit to show up to my buddy's house to kind of show them that I just got out of prison, like I was a badass in this prison outfit, man, in this prison uniform, you know, and I had the option, I had the choice of change into my clothes, right? And I did just that, man. I stayed in that state issued, you know, dress out uniform that they gave me to parole in, man. And I showed up to my buddies, you know, and looking back on that, man, you know, they were probably like, man, what a loser, right? Or who knows, you know, in that group, you know, they could have thought of it as like, oh, wow, you know, he's been in prison, don't fuck with them, you know? Yeah. And then that's what I wanted, right? That was my objective out of it, was don't fuck with me, you know? But inside I'm dying, right? Inside I'm full of fear. Inside I'm full of pain. Inside I'm full of anger. And I'm this little kid, right, that's scared to death, right? But that wants to put on this mask, right? Yeah. I want to put on this mask that I'm this badass that just got out of prison, man. And, you know, that spiraled way out of control. You know, I'll share a little bit about, you know, and speed it up a little bit. You know, I couldn't get off parole after that, man. You know, and it's something that I almost look forward to, you know, and I was a chronic absconder. You know, I couldn't even stay clean long enough to even just report for that day. When I would get out, I was clean. Clean enough to go in and give one piss test and then start running, right? Yeah. I wouldn't even do that. I would get loaded right away and not even go in, right? And just, I probably have, you know, looking back, I've done, you know, probably 3 or 4, you know, of my own background checks, you know, expungement processes, you know, I've been through a few live scans in my life now, clearing up that wreckage, right? And looking back on that, man, I have like 23 abscondings, man, where I was on the West Yard in Chino from the age of 19 to 28 years old, man. I couldn't stay out longer than 2 months at a time, man. And you know, and not to say that I was this hardcore convict either, because I wasn't, man. Right. I was just addicted to methamphetamines, and that's what I love doing. And I would tell people that, man, you know, and during that time, man, when I was 21 years old, and my son's mother, man, you know, we had met when we were in junior high school, right? We met when we were 12 years old, and we were together all the way up until like our early 20s, man. And she was pregnant with my son. She had just gotten into some trouble too, you know, and she ended up getting clean the last few months of her pregnancy with my son, man. And I was in Chino. She wasn't supposed to be due to 2 weeks after I had paroled. My mom picks me up from the Chino West Yard and says, Tara's in labor right now. Oh, wow. So, and that's a God shot for me, man. Yeah. You know, I would have never made it. I would have never made it to my son's birth, man. I wouldn't have, you know, because I love getting loaded, man. And, you know, and that's just my story. I'm a sick individual, man, you know, and she took me straight from the Chino West Yard, straight to the hospital in Corona, you know, and I was there for my son's birth. I, you know, was able to, you know, be there and do the whole cutting the umbilical cord and be present, right? 5 minutes later, man, I was on the phone with the connection talking about let's celebrate, right? Yeah. And not just let's celebrate, right? I didn't come back, man. You know, I didn't come back. And not only after that, but for a long time after that, you know, and, you know, in that whole time, you know, like I said, from that first possession from sales case when I was 18, you know, all the way until I was 28 years old, I was in and out, in and out, in and out, you know, and finally, my mother, she had, her dream was to retire and buy her liquor license, you know, and she wanted to open up a bar, you know, and she did just that. You know, she bought her liquor license, you know, she was looking for establishments, man. And, you know, lo and behold, she came across an establishment in the north end of San Bernardino called the Music Room. You know, it's no longer there. And she ends up taking over ownership over this bar, right? And she doesn't own the building, right? But she's leasing the building. Right. And this place has been there for like 60 years. You know, there's regulars that have been coming there for 50 years, right? And I'm 17 years old at the time I turned 21. So I migrate. Once I turn 21, I migrate out to San Bernardino. And once again, you know, what mothers love doing best, man. She gives me that full opportunity, gives me the, you know, the code to the bar, right? The key to the bar, you know, the alarm codes, and gives me a job. So now I'm fully in addiction, right? Using methamphetamine, getting drunk all day for free, you know, and also helping her out and being functional, right?
All right.
And like I said a little bit earlier, man, I always held that dear to me, right? That I was this functional addict, man. That as long as I could get some sleep every night, and I would tell myself, as long as I could hold a conversation with my mom, I'm all right.
Yeah.
You know, and the only way to do that was to get rest, man. And you know, so that became, you know, from 21 till I was 28, man. And there was a regular, you know, and I forget the guy's name, man, but, you know, and it's crazy, but this was my first introduction to treatment in a bar scene, man. And because these regulars, man, they would be confused, you know, they really would, you know, and they would ask my mom, they would get off a hard days of work, and they would ask my mom, man, and it would confuse them. They would look at me and say, hey, like, what's up with your son? It's like, we see him here every day, you know, like, does he have any attributes? Like, does he have any skill sets?
Right.
We could get him a job, right? And my mom would tell him, man, you know, his father passed away when he was 6 years old. I've been taking care of him his whole life. He really doesn't know how to do anything, right? And it was this one individual, right, that planted the seed in my mom's ear, you know, that he used to be this big meth distributor in San Bernardino, and that there was help, right? The first introduction to treatment, that there was some help and there was this treatment. He gave my mother this card, and he said, hey, have him call this place, you know, and he could get help, you know, and that was something foreign to my mother, you know.
Right.
It was like, wow, there's help out there, you know, and I'll never forget, man, she had sat me down for the first time in my whole entire life. She sat me down, man, after all the year getting her house raided, just in and out of prison, you know. Like I said, she never once sat me down and had a conversation with me about an issue or a problem that I had with addiction, man. And she sat me down, and I'll never forget that conversation. You know, she said, look, check it out. I love you to death. You're my youngest son. This man saying that there's help out there for you. He gave me this card. She said, I love you to death. You're my youngest son. But if you're not willing to help yourself, I can't continue to do it anymore. And she said, if you don't go, she said, I'm going to file a restraining order on you.
Oh, damn.
And I flip out. I flip my lid. And looking back, you know, it gives me the chills talking about it, man. You know, because that was one story in my life that I could look back and reflect on, of how insane I really was, man. That defense mechanism, that wall, those blinders that I had on all those years of thinking that I wasn't an addict, man. And I flipped my lid because I didn't understand. So I got so angry. You know, she got so scared. The cops came, pepper sprayed out. And this is in the middle of operating hours. You know, she had pulled me into her back office at the bar, you know, and now we're full on in the actual bar, you know, in front of all the customers. I'm losing my shit, right? And the cops come, I'm pepper sprayed, right? And that story, man, I never want to forget how insane, you know, I was, man, you know, and that's a true reflection, you know, on how deep, you know, the addiction transpired in my life, man, and that false perception of thinking, you know, as long as I'm just showing up and help, because that was my defense mechanism. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs now, right? What are you talking about? I show up every day, right? I'm helping you out. You know, I don't steal from you, right. You know, and I'm not this addict, right? And sure enough, I get site released, man. You know, they site release me, and I show up the next day, you know, and she serves me, bam. She serves me with a restraining order. And like I said, man, I didn't know how to survive on my own. I really didn't. You know, I was, you know, a white boy from a middle-class neighborhood. You know, my mother, you know, had middle-class money that was able to enable my addiction my entire life. And never realizing that's what was really going on that entire time. you know, and so I became homeless, right? I became homeless, man, you know, and at first it was kind of like couch surfing with individuals, you know, that I knew around the area, right? And that burns out quick. You know, it really does. It burns out quick. And I was with this family across the street in this apartment complex in the north end of San Bernardino, you know, and the mom and you know, and the children that were there, you know, they were highly already involved of their own hustles, man, growing up in San Bernardino with an addict mom. You know, their hustle was, you know, stealing Hondas, man, stealing Hondas and pulling the motors out, you know what I mean? And putting them in another Honda that they had bought for $300, you know what I mean? With the blown motor, but they would swap out the motors, you know what I mean? So I got all involved with that, you know, and, you know, she had gotten evicted, man. And, you know, she had a friend in Musquay on Cajon Boulevard, right across the street from the train tracks in Musquay, you know, and so she lets her move in with all her kids, right? And I migrate with them to Musquay, you know, and you know, and it just burned out, man. My welcoming stay just burned out. You know, I didn't have a job. There was no, you know, I wasn't providing in any sense, you know, and financially to keep my end going, right? And so that was a whole nother lifestyle, though, being in that area of Musquay, man. You know, I would see, you know, 20, 30% of the people that were, you know, resided there, man. They were comfortable out there with the shopping cart, right? And then the insanity behind thinking that was okay, you know? And so that became me, man. You know, it really did. It became me. I became that guy that I said I'd never become. That guy out there, like we were just talking about before the podcast started, man, you know, is I became that guy, man. I became that guy pushing that shopping cart, you know what I mean? Screaming at God, asking God why, you know, hating God that I was in a position in my life so low, you know, that it was his fault, you know, and to look back on that though, and working with the sponsor and really digging deep into that scenario in my life and realizing my part in that story, you know, my soul was just so broken at that moment because my mother, the only person that had loved me my entire life, had cut me off. I was destroyed spiritually, you know, and didn't know how to identify the feelings, you know, and I didn't understand what was going on, right? So I hated God for it. You know, and
it probably goes back to a lot of the rejection that you experienced as a kid.
Exactly.
Right? The only person that hasn't rejected you was your mother. And so now it's like this whole self-pity thing while like, I understand why my friends didn't want me around. I understand why certain women didn't want me around. I understand all that. But the one person that no matter what I did or how I behaved is there for me, right, is no longer there, right? And that's like a deep-rooted, like, wow, I must be shit.
Exactly.
I must be low. I must be no good. I must be worthless. I must be, right? And it's just like, just piled on rejection, piled on rejection, piled on rejection, piled on rejection. And so the lack of accountability is what gets us in trouble, bro, right? When we sit there, bro, as grown adults, blaming everybody for our problems, bro, nobody changes, bro. Right? Like I firmly believe, bro, that victims don't get clean. If you're just a victim to your circumstances, bro, then you're never going to be victorious, bro. You're never going to get to a place where, like for me, I had to get to a place where I was like, you know what? Like I have a say-so in the way my life turns out, right? I have like things that I need to do because my whole life I was a victim to my mom, a victim to my dad, a victim to God, a victim to circumstance, a victim to the neighborhood, a victim to a lifestyle. Like it wasn't nobody else's fault, right? Like it was in my head, it was everything the way my life turned out. Like I truly believed wholeheartedly that this is the life, like as an addict, this is the life I was supposed to live. This is what God gave me. Right? If he didn't want me to be an addict, if he didn't want me to do the things that I did, then why would he fucking allow me to live here? Why would he allow me to be born into this family? Right? And that's just not true, bro. Because now, like, My sister, she's an addict too, bro, right? But she always told me, she's like, she told me this, bro. Like, life wasn't as bad as you made it seem, right? Like, for real, bro. And she said, and you know why I think that way? She said, I think because at an early age, I learned to accept that this is the way that our life was. And she said, I don't think you ever fully accepted this is just the way things were. And so because of my perception, right, and my rejection of like, this isn't how it's supposed to be, it really fucking, and she, like I said, she turned out to be an addict too. I mean, there's always degrees to addiction. You know what I'm saying? Just like there's degrees to recovery, right? But it was always my perception, bro, right? And if it was everybody else's fault, then why do anything about it? I can't do anything about it, right? It's my mom's fault. She should do something about it, right? Exactly. It's my dad's fault. He should do something about it. It was God's fault. He needs to do something about it. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's why I believe victims don't get clean, bro. And I'm not saying that we're not a victim to certain circumstances, certain situations, bro. Yeah, we are a victim, bro. I was a victim to certain things, bro. But like at the end of the day, bro, like I have to take accountability and responsibilities for what I could do about that, bro. Like if I was hurt as a kid, bro, right? Nobody's gonna come and save me from that. The people that hurt me are not gonna come and make amends for that, right? Like they're not, like nobody else is gonna do that, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? When I talk to people, I'm like, look, bro, nobody's coming on a fucking plane, a boat, a jet, a fucking a car, nobody's coming to rescue you, bro. Like God's not gonna come out of the clouds and save you, bro. Like none. And I'm not saying that God's not a part of the program, and I'm not saying that people don't fucking help me, right? But like at the end of the day, bro, you gotta be willing to fucking do something, bro. And until I fucking got to a place where I was fucking getting high and thinking to myself, fuck, like maybe it is me the reason why I'm fucking here, bro. Maybe it's not my mom's fault that I'm a fucking junkie at a very young age. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's not everybody else's fault. Like at some point, like I chose to put that pipe to my mouth. And it gets, for me, it's this, right? At some point, I had an opportunity to do something with my life. I had an opportunity to change. I had an opportunity to work stats. I had an opportunity to work with a sponsor. I had an opportunity to go to meetings. I had an opportunity to pray, and I chose not to do any of that. Right? So like, that's my fault. That's something I need to take accountability for and say, you know what? Like, I had an opportunity. I didn't take the opportunity. So when the next opportunity came, bro, I knew that I had a grasp on something, bro, because I was at the end of my run, bro. I couldn't fucking keep blaming everybody, bro. I couldn't keep blaming my dad for me being a bad dad. I couldn't keep blaming my mom for me being a bad significant other. I couldn't keep blaming society because I was broke, busted, and disgusted, bro. Like, I had to take some accountability and say, you know what? I might have been powerless, right? For becoming the addict that I became, but I'm no longer powerless today, right? I have some choices that I could make that could change the direction of my life, bro. Right? And so, like, at some point, we got to get off the pity potty, right? And we got to do something about our problem, right? But for me, like, when I hear you talk about that, it's a lot of rejection, right? It's a lot of, yeah. And so when the last person that was in your corner finally set boundaries, and just for anybody listening, right? For anybody listening, right? That, like, we think that, like, fuck, again, chills, right? We think that we're like saving people and that we're protecting people, but really we're enabling people, right? And at some point, all three of us and every addict I ran into face consequences, face boundaries where they're like, fuck, I either keep going down this fucking path or something needs to change, bro. Right? Because if there weren't certain consequences that happened in my life and if people didn't see me unfit to be a dad, I wouldn't be here today, bro. Right? If Mike wasn't pushed out of every dope spot that he was allowed and his mom wouldn't have fucking set those boundaries, like, you got to either get right or you can't be around, Mike wouldn't be here, right? If your mom would have never fucking got this restraining order on you and pushed you to that bottom, bro. And here's the truth, man. Some people are going to fucking die, bro. Right. But this is the thing, bro. Like, if you're fucking drinking yourself away, you're going to fucking die. There is no way around it, bro. Right? Everybody has a clean date. Right? It's either something that you're going to claim and something that you're going to talk about, or it's going to be edged on your fucking tombstone, bro. Period. Yeah. There's no way around it, bro. It's inedible for addicts and alcoholics, bro. It's just what it is, dog. Mm-hmm. Right? There's no escaping it. There's no running from it. You could prolong it. You can make it all the way to 60, 70 years old. But that's how you're going to be remembered, bro.
Exactly.
Right? So, like, at some point, because I think about this, I got kids. right? I got 4. The chances of me having an addict in those 4 are probably high, especially with me being an addict, with their mom still out there doing fucking dope. You know what I'm saying? And now I'm talking about like a whole family tree of just fucking broken branches and rotten fruit, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like at some point, there was a high chance that and of course I'm gonna do everything in my power, but I have to remember, like if I ever have to reach that point, I have to set boundaries, not just with people outside of my home, but I need to set boundaries in my home, bro. You know what I'm saying? When my daughter was smoking weed and all that stuff, I said, look it, bro, like there are certain things that you are not allowed to do in my house. And I promise you, if it gets to that fucking point, you are going to have to leave. You're going to have to leave, bro. I had a talk with her at a very young age, bro, right? My daughter's an adult now, right? She's allowed to do whatever she wants to a certain point, bro, with respect, right? She's 20 years old, bro. She came home with a hickey, right, a while back, bro. And I was like, no, I don't care how old you are. Right? Because that shows me that you don't respect me. And more importantly, that shows that he doesn't respect me. And if that's the case, I don't want him around me. Right? And she never came home with a hickey. Well, I think one more time after that. You know what I'm saying? But she was trying to cover it up at least the next time. You know what I'm saying? But like for me, bro, if and I'll end with this and I'll let you keep going, bro. But like people, you know, always say like, oh, people, there's some people that want to be here and there's some people that have to be here, bro. Everybody has a choice, bro. I did an H&I panel yesterday. I told them, I don't care why you're here, bro. Right? Because if your parole sent you here, if DCFS sent you here, if your wife, we all have a choice.
Right.
Right? We don't have to fucking come. Right? So if you're here in treatment, you have a choice, bro. And even though I had consequences, and that's what drove me back, right, to the rooms, that doesn't mean that my start of my recovery was any less than anybody's else, bro. You know how many people come on a court card? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And stay?
Right.
Right? Because they found something that they never found before. They found something they never found before. They heard something they never heard before, bro. Right? So it doesn't matter how you get here, but like for me, it took those consequences. It took me losing my kids. It took me a CPS, worker breathing down my neck. It took that for me to get to a place where I'm like, all right, because CPS set a boundary with me. They said, if you get loaded, you're never going to see your kids again. Mm-hmm. Right? And so and even the dope spot set a boundaries with you.
Yeah. I wasn't allowed there anymore. What I found and what I have in common with you, Mike, is I always had a feeling of rejection, whether or not I was rejected by my peers or not. It was just how I felt. Yeah. Like I looking back at it now, I wasn't rejected by any of my friends. I just felt that way. As soon as I put a drug or alcohol in my body, I felt accepted. It was a false sense of acceptance. And I ran on that until the very end, where I was literally rejected once again by the community that I felt like I was a part of.
Yeah.
Right.
And I wasn't allowed in the door anymore.
Wow.
They didn't want me there. So until I was fully rejected, like the boundaries had been set with my mom and nobody wanted me around, then I became willing to try something different, you know? Because I was always able to find a new group of people that didn't know me yet. Or I would find a new drug to get into, and that false sense of acceptance was there until it wasn't, dude. And then I finally threw up the white flag with a lot of willingness and a lot of pain. And that's what made the difference for me.
Yeah.
So you're in Muscoy.
Homeless.
So yeah, and I love what both of you guys had to say about that, man. It's a whole lifestyle of rejection, right? The consequences were never enough in my life from early on going to prison, right? I spoke about that, and nothing was ever deep enough, to get clean, or to even know that there was a way out, because I didn't know that there was a way out. I really didn't, and having my son wasn't enough. It wasn't. Like I totally, like I said, I absconded from the hospital 5 minutes after he was born. Not one time did it click in my mind like, oh, you got a son now, you better get clean, right? And so I'm homeless in Muscoy, man. And, my daily hustle became recycling, man, out of a certain apartment complex right there off of University. I would cross the train tracks from Muscoy, go up to University, right, where it was a little bit nicer, and there was an apartment complex, right? And I would hit one dumpster, and I would make my round around the whole complex, every dumpster that they had in that apartment complex until I got to the other end, right? Okay. And that progressed in itself, you know, and when I would come out of the other end, the opposite end, I would come right down the road, and the recyclable center was there. So in my mind, I had it all figured out. And how sick I was, right?
Was it Castle Park?
Castle Park Apartments off University.
No, I know the area.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know that place is shaped like this, and when you come out, it's not there anymore. But
it's not. Yeah, the recycle center is not there, and probably for that reason. It really probably for that reason of the homelessness, you know. And it's sad, you know. And and there was an encampment that was right there by the San Bernardino Inn by Taco Bell. And there was a side hill, right, where you would trench into the back of it, right? And it was a tent city back there, man. And that's where I lived, you know. And, and saying all that, man, you know, my hustle, you know, was collecting. I would probably earn $7 a day from that 2 or 3 hours of work that I did of hitting those dumpsters, right? And I would come out with 3, 4 big old recyclable bags slinged over my shoulder, right? All plastic bottles though, right? So I'm only getting like $7. But as long as I still had Chewy, right? As long as I still had Chewy down the street that was gonna hook me up that nickel, I had it going on. Yeah. Right? I really did. My mindset, you know, he knew my hustle, I knew my hustle, and as long as he was comfortable with me bringing him that $5 to score, I was all right, man, because I was the only one in the world that had that, right? I was the only one in the world that was hustling for $5 and that had a connection that would hook me up a nickel, right? And not a nickel, right? He'd probably give me a 20 for the $5 that I gave him, right? And I was extravagant, right? But in that story, man, you know, looking back, what really happened in that story, man, is I became in a meth-induced psychosis. You know, my sleeping behaviors, you know, were totally off the line, right? I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't, you know, my hygiene wasn't right. I wasn't showering, wasn't brushing my teeth, right? I had a anger issue with God by now, right? And that progressed, man, to where now not only am I recycling, right? Now it's to a point to where I'm feeding myself out of the dumpsters, man. Right. And I would find a box of pizza, man. And in my mind would tell me that somebody put that there for me, man. That's how sick I became, right? I would sometimes turn around and say, thank you. And nobody would be there. But in my mind told me that they seen me coming and they put that box of pizza in there with 2 pieces left because they knew I was hungry. Is how sick I became, man, you know. And to speed it up a little bit, you know, that same Chewy that I'm speaking about, man, you know, he had came and he had came me to serve me my little nickel on the hillside of the San Bernardino Inn right there, man. And he was in a stolen vehicle, right? And he tells me, hop in, right? So I hop in with them, and this is my first time being in a vehicle probably in months, right? Grimy from the head up, from the head down, man. You know, and I'm so embarrassed once we start going into the car, right? You know, because I smell the stench, right? And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm just like, you know, just it's just terrible. The smell is horrible, right? And I had not even realized it, man. I'm just so sick and so deep, you know, in homelessness, man, that I had no idea what was really transpiring in my life, man. And so we get on the freeway, man, and we get off in downtown, and he pulls into this motel downtown San Bernardino, man. And it's getting hit. It's getting raided, right? And it's probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So we just pull in, we flip a Yui, and we leave, right? One of the officers had noticed that, right? Flips the lights, right? Highway speed chase, full-on highway speed chase now, right? We're on the freeway again, highway speed chase. He finally pulls over. He ends up getting 4 years with 80%, right? I'm sure he had priors, you know, and I get 2 years with half. And that's because I'm still absconding on my probation for God knows how long now, right? So it's an old case from 2 years ago that I get this 2 years with half for. So in saying that story, man, for the first time in my life, and how we were just all sharing, man, you know, there was no clarity. There was no moment of clarity in my life up until this point, man. You know, there was no consequence deep enough in my life that God had brought me to that ever turned on the on switch in my brain to say, man, this is it, you know? And I truly believe that the God of my understanding brought me to that place so low in my life that that's what it had to take. It had to take that complete desperation, being completely cut off all ties from the mother that's been taking care of you your entire life, your spirit to be broken so deeply for you to understand and for you to want to make a change in your life, man. So I do the 2 years with half, right? And it's coming time, you know, to getting out, and I'm scared for the first time in my life, man. And it's like, what am I going to do? I'm either going to go straight back to Muscoy, the same spot of homelessness, or that little seed had been planted, man. That little seed had been planted from that fellow, you know, alcoholic at my mom's bar about treatment and help. Or maybe there is some way, or there's some other solution that I could take to possibly try to get help, man. You know, so I get released. My brother picks me up. You know, he's living in Sun City at the time. And he says, look, check it out. You could stay with me for, you know, a week if you want, right? He said, I talked to this intake coordinator at this 6-month in treatment faith-based program. He said, I already talked to him. All you got to do is go check yourself in, right? In my mind, I just want to get loaded. Never had been introduced to Narcotics Anonymous, man. I had like $10 in my pocket that I got released with. You know what I mean? I just want to go get a dime and get loaded, you know, escape, right? So I stay with my brother it lasted like a day. I'm already running the streets of Sun City trying to score, right? I score, I get all loaded, right? Stay out all night, come back to my brother's the next day. Now I'm loaded, you know, and so he takes me to the Salvation Army, man. And I had no idea at the time, you know, that the intake coordinator said, look, the only requirement that we expect out of you is you have to test clean.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, shit, I'm dirty, you know? And so I go back out and I tell this whole lie to my brother, right? That they said, oh, come back on Tuesday, right? I calculated the 3 days it would take to get clean, right? And I fabricate this whole false story to my brother, like, oh yeah, you know, they said they have a bed for me on Tuesday, which was 3 days after the fact, right? So, and to say that Super Bowl Sunday 2016 was that weekend, man. So we go to his buddy's house. I get all wasted off alcohol, right? But that Tuesday comes up, man, you know, and I test clean, man. And I get into a 6-month residential drug treatment program, highly faith-based in Paris, California, you know, and I made the decision, man. I had no other choice. I had nowhere else to go. You know, I had burned every bridge. I had crossed every tie, you know what I mean? You know, my family didn't want nothing to do with me, you know, and lo and behold, though, you know, they were scared to death for me, you know, and I made that decision to stay, man. I graduated a 6-month in treatment program in 2016 in September, and I haven't looked back since, man. My clean date's February 8th, 2016. You know, I just celebrated 8 years, and you know, and it gives me the chills, man, because this is the part of my story, you know, where you know, God, I truly believe the God of my understanding had given me a second chance to try to live a first-class life, man. You know, you know, the biggest part, you know, the biggest thing I've earned out of recovery, man, is being able to regain those relationships, man, with the ones I hurt the most, and with my mother, you know, and my sister, you know, my son. You know, my son was 8 years old, man, when I graduated that treatment, man, and my son's mother had brought him to my graduation ceremony, right? and I didn't even know who he was. It was like, and I still have a picture on my phone today. It was like two strangers hugging for the first time, you know, and it's not like that today. You know, I'm a father to my son, you know, I'm employable, you know, I'm a son to my mother, you know, and I'm present, you know, and by all means, I'm not normal, but today I could try to do shit that normal people do, and it feels good. You know, it feels good, you know, and just to say this too, man, I had gotten a job, you know, I stayed in sober living 3 years after I graduated that program, and I still needed that accountability, man. Yeah. I really did. You know, I was a convicted felon, being told when to come out and shower, when to come out and eat. I still needed a live-in resident manager that held me accountable with the meeting court card, you know, and every week random drug test. I needed that, man. Yeah. You know, and I got a job, you know, through a temp agency loading trailers at Burlington Distribution, you know, off of right here in San Bernardino off Waterman and Mill. And I made that a career. You know, this was in 2016 of October is when I came in through a temp agency, you know, and throughout the years, you know, it took me a while to get hired on because my convicted felon passed, you know, but after I was able to get hired on, sky was the limit, man. You know, and I started to notice the attributes of myself, man. No longer was I beating myself up and holding myself victim like we were talking about, man. You know, I seen that I had leadership, you know, abilities in my lifestyle, man. My personality is something that I've never in my entire life had seen, you know, to piggyback off what I said way earlier about, you know, my 5-year goals, you know, and for the first time in my life, I seen myself progressing in life, man. And, you know, and I eventually ended up getting promoted into a, you know, area manager level position, you know, and you know, and I'm here to tell you guys, man, that, you know, no addict ever have to use again, man, because I was released from that job. You know, my entire recovery, I've been at this job, you know, and you know, this last December 2023, man, they walked me out the door, and I've been at this place for 7.5 years. You know, and not just at a minimum wage, right? I was on a salary-based commission, you know, which what I call a career, you know, and from going, it was a part of my personality, man, a part of my, you know, I'm spiritually crushed over this, man, because it's part of my identity and who I portrayed myself to be today is you know, a productive, you know, man of society, and not only a society, but in my home life and in my work life, man. You know, so this past year has been by far the hardest year, you know, and through acceptance and through, you know, calling and being vulnerable and telling you guys, man, being honest, you know, with anybody that's listening to the story, you know, I got to be honest, you know, I really do. You know, I got to tell you I'm hurt. I got to tell you that I'm in pain. I got to tell you that I'm scared to death, that, you know, that I feel that I don't amount to getting another job, you know, and that all stems from that deeply rooted, you know, past. But I can't live in the past. I got to continue to live in the future, continue to put one foot in front of the other, man, continue to be there for my son, continue to be a loving boyfriend, and hopefully, you know, it turns into a marriage. You know, I'm in a beautiful relationship today. You know, we don't fight, we don't argue. You know, and she's been a huge pillar, man, in this last year of my life. You know, and yeah, it's just a blessing, man. It's truly a blessing to be gifted this second chance at a first class life.
Hell yeah, Mike. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
That was awesome. There's one last question that we ask at the end of the podcast. If you could give a piece of advice to somebody that's maybe still using, somebody that's been through some of the things that you've been through, had some of the experiences that you had and felt the way that you felt, what would you tell somebody?
You know what? That's an awesome question, you know, and for me, and I'm sure a lot of us, and, you know, both of you sitting here, Adam and Michael, you know, it has to come from desperation. Yeah. Something desperate enough in your life that you feel, you know, that leads you to a spot to where you're completely in a position to where you feel the insanity, you feel the unworthiness, everything that's completely the opposite of positive attribution, man. Living the lies, living the street lifestyle, you know, being a thief, you know, being a cheater, you know, all that stuff, you guys, you know, is something that we live an entire life, you know, of falsifying our identity, you know, and I just really hope, man, that something in your guys' life, you know, could become so desperate, you know, to where you see a change or see an option, you know, that you have a choice today to make a decision, man, to come into the rooms of this 12-step program called Narcotics Anonymous, you know, and at first it's foreign, it's strange, it doesn't make sense, you know, the suggestions are bullshit, you know, and in the beginning, man, because your mind is telling you still, you know, all the lies, you know, and you know, but if you stick around, you just continue to show up at meetings, you know, and I couldn't tell you the week, the month, or the year that it happened where I had a spiritual awakening, where that obsession you use got lifted from my life. But it happens, you know, and anybody living this program, you know, could tell you the same story, man. You know, that this program of Narcotics Anonymous is life-changing. You know, at first, just show up to meetings and do the things that are suggested. You know, get a sponsor, work the steps, and continue to help others, you know, along the way, you know, and you know, and for an addict like me that was, you know, eating out of the dumpsters in Muscogee, screaming at God before I got here, you know, never think that there's not a God out there, you know, and I don't want to touch too deep on the God subject, but, you know, the God of my understanding, man, definitely awarded me, you know, a life beyond my wildest dream, man. So with that, man, my name's Mike and I'm an addict.
Oh yeah, Mike.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you, bro. That was perfect. And for everybody listening, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, send this to a loved one, a friend, a family member who you might think need to hear Mike's story. Thank you again, Mike.
Right. Thank you, guys.
Looking for the right state of mind to get my time right. I just hope my time's right. Lost up in the limelight, but you'll never know unless you walked up in my shoes.
As someone who struggled with addiction in the past, how does it feel to be able to give hope to others who are still struggling now?
You know, it's such an honor to be able to hear other people's experiences of life, to see how when faced with the very thing that was sent to destroy you, kill you and take you out forever didn't, but rather you have been given a second chance to give hope and be a light for those who are still in the dark. So don't be afraid to share your message to the world. You never know whose life you might be saving.